Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today, May 2026, and I'm going to talk about the children that were born in November of 2025. I'm not doing this video by sun sign or by astrological sign, but rather by month, because I think it's important to look at it from a general dynamic. This is to help anybody who will be parenting, grandparenting, the aunts, the uncles, anyone who has influence over the children that are being raised in these unprecedented times and times that we ourselves can't really project or see moving forward because of technology. Um, I think this will help you understand the world your children have chose to come into. The natal chart to me is an intention. It's like a roadmap. I'm deciding I want to go to Arizona. Here's the map, and here are the potential paths I could take to get there. So, depending upon your personal planets and where they are aligned will tell you what that map is. So here in November, what I'm going to do is I'm first going to look at the outer planets as they are generational planets and set a world stage. Uranus represents innovation, the future. It represents humanity and the collective consciousness and technology. And technology is going to explode. And Uranus rules explosions. It also rules awareness and an awakening of the genius. So it's not just the material, it's visions of what can be. Neptune also rules visions of what can be, but from a spiritual nature and extremely creative music, lyrics, poetry, any kind of art, in the sense of photography and creating things that are of an illusional nature, a magical nature. Uh, that's what Neptune rules. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see my dog is apparently seeing something outside. I don't know if you can hear her barking, but she's having a moment. And then there's Pluto, which rules actually, I think Pluto is the most psychological planet of the zodiac, where it knows how to go in and ferret out your biggest fears and then potentially use them against you to get you to do what they want you to do. But on the flip side of that, Pluto rules great transformation and almost such a deep awareness of your own psychology that you transcend and rise like the phoenix and understand that the dark serves the light and provides an opportunity for the soul to stand in awareness of the journey and then make the choice that is more authentic to it. Some people would say the high road, but I don't know if it's always that. We are going to look at the inner planets, which are known as personal planets. The sun representing the identity, the ego, the I am. The moon representing the emotional body, how I feel. Mercury representing how I think, how I communicate, how I learn. We have Venus representing how I interact with other people in the way of partnerships, how I feel like I belong on this planet. It represents our self-confidence. She also represents money and in the form of, well, money is money, but in the form of what makes her feel secure. Mars represents how I act, how brave I am, how impulsive I am. It also represents where I want to stretch and learn about my capabilities and my body. We have the semi-personal planets of Jupiter, which represents education at a higher level, the diversity of the human experience as it represents international travel and experiences. Jupiter co-rules Pisces, so there's also a very spiritual element to Jupiter, not just religious element. So Jupiter can infer in many ways being able to travel to other realms, and I think these children will have an awareness of other realms on an intuitive level and potentially even within the material, being able to cross through other realms. I really don't know how things are going to shift, but they're going to shift like, I don't know, crazy. Saturn is also a semi-personal planet. Saturn represents mankind's history. It represents the responsibilities, duties, and obligations attached to authority and leadership. Saturn is having a big moment during this period of time because it's in a conjunction with Neptune, and that hasn't happened for thousands of years, according to some sources. We will also look at the nodes. The nodes of the moon represent karmic points. The south node represents a point of familiarity where the soul has habits of belief and action and almost a default. It can be a little erosive. It can be a point where we could inadvertently get stuck in a loop of unconsciousness. The North Node represents an experience we have yet to have, one that we're ravenous for, one that the soul finds joy and exhilaration in. We will also look at Chiron. Chiron is an asteroid that represents the chronic wound that we carry throughout a lifetime. And Chiron has been in Aries, so that wound would be in relation to the self, how we govern the self, how we hold space for ourselves, how we allow ourselves to expand, and how we interact with the self in relation to others, and how we perceive that. So it's going to be quite a ride. Let me pull up the chart and let's start with November 1st, 2025, and the children born in this time frame within this week or so. The first thing I noted was that Jupiter is in what they call a grand trine. It's very favorable aspect. Jupiter is here at 24 degrees in its exaltation of Cancer, where there's a lot of, I associate this with hometown heroes, people that are super popular within their communities. They can also be, it can be a very strong attachment to your country of origin, your family, the belief systems of your family, the interactions of family. It is in a trine, which is a favorable aspect that doesn't require effort, with Mars in the late degrees of Scorpio, which is quite significant because Mars is in an anaretic degree, which is a degree of tension. Mars is in co-rulership in Scorpio, so it's extremely strong here. This would be something favorable about the expansion of my beliefs, my power, and what I know about the depths of my own psychology. It can also be a very strong wealth, material wealth, money dynamic. Then we see, pardon me, there's also a trine between Saturn and Neptune. And Saturn also rules wealth, but it's wealth that matures over time, wealth that is earned through endurance and through continued and sustainable efforts. When we see Neptune, both these planets are retrograde. They are in Pisces and will not be back in Pisces or in this configuration again for hundreds of years. Neptune naturally rules Pisces. And in this retrograde specifically, it does not move past 29 degrees. So there is this urgency to revisit where I have allowed myself to escape my own creativity, my own awareness of the divine spark that lives within me. And I use the word spark because Neptune is also making a trine to Mars. So having these three planets in a conversation, I should say four planets actually, it's called a grand trine, and it is a very favorable aspect for your child's chart. And even within that, I didn't realize Mercury is in here as well. Mercury is now in Sagittarius, but it is also part of no, it's not. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Because Mercury's in Sagittarius is no fire sign. So while it's in a trine, it's not in the grand trine. The grand trine has to be within all in the same element. And this is all in water. So your child could be potentially very intuitive, very perceptive to other people's psychology and the masks that they wear. So as a parent, oftentimes we want our children to say nice things. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, which is true. But we also don't want to diminish that inner knowing and squelch it. because that will make a Scorpio child extremely tense and difficult because they'll fight. They'll fight for acknowledgement that what they're feeling is true. I think Scorpio is the most powerful sign of the zodiac, to be frank, because it has that awareness of that deep psychology. Now, while there is this kind of tenseness, there's also, as I said, this grand trine, which is working favorably and supporting this child's expansion and their ability to create their own abundance. We also see this charming Venus over here at or late degrees of Libra, which is also in rulership. Venus is in rulership here. So she's super charming. She's super engaging. And in the late degrees, she is conjunct a fixed star called Spica, which is the voice of angels. It's also an abundance point. So this is all very favorable for the children born, let's say, within the first week or so of November. There is a slight challenge here with Venus being in an opposition to Chiron, but this is kind of a natural opposition for Venus to have. She is very used to ruling the sign of partnership and yet unconsciously giving up her individuality. But in these modern times, I think that is the opportunity to shift. And with this being a Scorpio child, I think this might be more about the partners that she picks, and or he picks, depending upon what your child. I don't even know what to say about gender in 2026. But my point is this: is that Venus rules money, and so Venus being the female expression of a planet, is she could be in conflict with herself because we also have a square to Jupiter from Chiron. We have what we call a T square from these planets. So I would say for this Scorpio energy as a Scorpio sun that picking the right partners, making sure that they're aligned on a level where the Scorpio can respect its partner and the partner has a sense of individuality or doesn't try to thwart your child's individuality. That will be rather a big theme. Let's move on to the 5th. Actually, I'm going to move on to the 10th of November because at this time, we're seeing that Mercury has gone retrograde. And Mercury in a retrograde, and it's in its detriment, is really reviewing its philosophy's expansion and the willingness to. Mercury moves very quickly and it's conjunct Mars. This is a very speedy energy, and it could inadvertently create a child that in the learning dynamic gets the big concepts very quickly, but is impatient with the details of what you have to implement. And it's like, here's a good example. A child knows its mathematical, homework, but it doesn't know how it got there. Like if the teacher goes, well, how did you arrive at that conclusion? The child may be like, well, I don't know, I just did. And that would be very Scorpio child because I think they're very intuitive by nature. And again, depending upon where the moon and the rising sign are for your individual child will really give much more detail. I can't speak to that in such a general video. The dynamics I'm talking about will vary from person to person, but they'll still be there. So this is expansive, and at the same time, there's a bit of a challenge here. It's also in a loose opposition to Uranus, which has moved back into Taurus. This is the last time that Uranus will visit Taurus for 84 years, and it's going to retrograde back to about 24 degrees. But here at this time, at the 29th degree, is again a degree of urgency, an urgency to awaken from the past where things have been slow, stuttered, stubborn, or stuck, or I've let insecurity grip me, or I've let the worry of money or resources hold me back, where I haven't been able to look to the future clearly enough. And that could be a little bit of a challenge where, one of the things as a parent would be like, well, you know what, maybe it doesn't matter if you know exactly, you got the right answer, you probably got it intuitively. That's good. Let's move on. I think that these children are really going to be bridging an old dynamic and a new dynamic. And the old dynamic wants to always know, how do we get there? In fact, right now in 2026, people are still going to psychologists that say, well, let's talk about your childhood. And the person sitting in front of them is 50 years old. Going back isn't going to fix it. It isn't going to change it. So the past and the old structures need to be used as a rear view mirror to create and to design the future. And Sagittarius is a very expansive sign. So Mercury in retrograde with your child being born that way and conjunct Mars, they also could be super smart. They could be smart and more with words in given the right combination. And when I say war with words, I mean that they're just not a person who would ever want to fight with their fists or be aggressive physically. They would rather be aggressive mentally. I'm smarter than you. I shouldn't laugh when I say that. Okay, where are we going next? Let's see. Let's look around the 18th and the 19th. This seems to be kind of interesting days for our November babies. We're getting towards the end of the Scorpio energy. We see the sun is here at 26 degrees and Mercury has moved to 0 degrees retrograde, heading back into Scorpio. Whenever a planet is at 0 degrees retrograde or otherwise, there is a need to be very mindful about what permeates that planet's boundaries. And here would be the mind. It would be communication. It would be learning. It would be siblings or cousins or neighbor, the neighborhood kids, the community. Does it serve my child's, expansive thoughts, or is it somehow trying to pigeonhole my child? That would be something that I would think could potentially be in the child's chart, because the sun represents the I am. And Mercury at that 0 degree, I feel like I have to protect the I am. Now we're talking about intuitive children, right? Overall, this generation with Neptune and Saturn on the world axis, and they're all being born at this time, they are going to be so much more connected to the soul that is inhabiting a physical experience versus that I'm a human. So there really could be a challenge in the beginning when they are describing or when they're feeling themselves, and it is so incredibly expansive in comparison to what previous generations have experienced. So toddlers could be so much more communicative, or you could like just be able to read your child, maybe even without words sometimes, and be so aware. I also want to point out that we still have this opposition to Uranus, and both these planets being retrograde at the time. If this is the map of your child's birth, there's quite a few planets that are retrograde right now. So they are revisiting concepts that they have had in their past soul's history. I mean, we've got not only the outer planet of Uranus, Neptune, we've got Saturn is retrograde, Jupiter is retrograde, the nodes are retrograde. And the nodes, I hate to say, I just do that accidentally. The South Node, as I said earlier, is a point of habit. And in Virgo, there's a point of habit to be married to process, to be married to analyzing something, to overly analyzing something, to be overly married to the physical apparatus that is my body. It could even be, potentially out of balance, like I don't trust my body and I worry about my body all the time. There's also on a psychological level, with the Virgo energy, a tendency to be self-critical or to be, chasing perfectionism. And the north node is where I'm stretching to see the divine, to see, or it could also be the practicality of I'm too practical to allow my dreams, to chase my dreams, to nurture my dreams, to give my dreams life. So that's something that you'd want to kind of, I don't know, like, when kids are little, they learn that they can be, princesses and princes, and they can, interact with magical beings at Disneyland. And I feel like they are magical beings, and part of the parental unit and the guides for these children is to help them keep their magic. I think that's so important. Venus is making favorable aspects to the nodes, and Venus, while she's not considered in favor in Scorpio, because without her power, she feels she can be very jealous here. I don't think that's going to be true for this new generation. I think that Venus here will really represent money and the ability to make money and to support my dreams. So this aspect goes on for, about a week or so, maybe even to the end of the month, but in the further away the numbers get from each other, the less the influence. So having Venus at 14 degrees, she's just coming in. When she hits 15 degrees, she'll be in an exact harmonious aspect to stretching for that real dream experience. And it will be supported by the processes that she uses to focus on that dream. So I think that's really important. I'm not going to talk about the moon because the moon moves so quickly that it would be, you can't even put that in a video like this because it's so specific to your individual child, to your individual life path. And I can't do the rising sign. Both of those are extremely specific and time sensitive. Jupiter's retrograde is in a trine to the sun as well. That's important. So there is a couple of things going on here. We've got favorable aspects from Jupiter while in retrograde. It's still in its exaltation. It's making an exact trine to Saturn in Pisces retrograde, which would make me be it would compel me to review where I am building sustainable structures for my future and truly building wealth. And wealth is not just money, it's good health. It's faith that the future is bright regardless of the outside circumstances. The sun is also involved here. And I think that the sun, while it never retrogrades at this 26th degree here of Scorpio, in a trine to Saturn and to Jupiter, is indicating that with nurturing and continued willingness to move beyond that which is into that which I want to create, the sun is very powerful here, and the ego can be very well balanced and serve the bigger picture. But we'll have to remember that thoughts are things and continue to engage my mind in the direction I want to go, not where I have been. Saturn always rules history of some kind. Okay, Saturn goes direct on the 28th. That's towards the end of the month, and we've moved into the Sagittarius energy. And that does make a big difference. Now, what we're seeing in the November energy for Saturn is it's been at 25 degrees almost the whole time, which means it's stationed. That means it's 5 times more powerful than it is when it's actually in motion. So Saturn sitting stationed in the sky is asking every planet it comes in conversation with, is what you're endeavoring sustainable? Is it something that's moving you towards your dreams, towards your ease, towards your own personal golden age? And that question is so powerful for the benefit of these children. Now, what's so beautiful about the Sagittarian energy is there are a couple of points that are very fortuitous. At 14 degrees of Sagittarius, we have what we call the great attractor. And whatever planet is close to that, within, let's say, 5 to 10 degrees, I don't know my exact notes, that planet has power to benefit. Here we see it's Mars and even the sun. So when I'm brave enough to shine my light and to venture out and to follow my passion, there is benefit to be offered, even if there is squares or challenging aspects to that planet. It's just going to require a little more effort to get past the square. And a square is often something that happens on the outside that doesn't directly oppose me, but it triggers something on the inside that creates a tension or a doubt or an unsureness. We see that Venus is at the anaretic degree of Scorpio, where she's really having to continue to believe in herself and remember her power, still in a great conversation with Saturn and with Neptune and even with Jupiter here. Mercury is still retrograde at the end of the month. Mercury will go direct in a couple of days on the 30th. So Mercury is now stationed. Mercury stationed at 20 degrees is like, this is the powerful dynamic where Mercury is sitting in the sky and almost, I think this is the signature. And again, your child's individual chart will reveal more. But I believe that when Mercury's in Scorpio, you have the ability to see behind the mask and behind the veil of the physical. So there is the potential for being able to talk to the dead. That's kind of where I'm going with that. And the trine over here to a retrograde Jupiter, which is the connection to the angelic realm. This, it's not the tightest. I like to keep things between 1 and 3 degrees, but the 4 degrees difference, it's not that far off. So this combination could very well be a Sagittarius child that has an inner knowing that may not make sense to the outside world, but will make perfect sense to their inner world. And to nurture their inner world will bring it into the material and the outer world. Let's pop real quickly over to the 30th, the last day of the month. And Venus has Mercury has gone direct and Venus is at that anaretic degree, just like literally hours from moving into the Sagittarius energy. And she's making a direct trine to Neptune retrograde. So this is very much a talent and a skill for being able to traverse worlds and traverse realms. We see, Jupiter's involved here. And these children are going to be intuitive anyway. I mean, even the most practical of these children is going to be intuitive. And when I say practical, I mean the most earthbound of these children will be intuitive. They'll just say they have a way with numbers or they have a way with, the geometry or the way, calculations work or whatever their earthy thing is. And I think this trine is very supported by, even though there's an opposition to Uranus, Uranus being retrograde and in the 29th degree of Taurus to Venus, I think that Neptune actually starts to soften that opposition because Venus has to be willing to allow, or the child and their Venus energy will have to allow for the history with which they come from, that how their personal worth was shaped, how their skills were nurtured. They may just, because Uranus rules the internet and rules technology, they may be exposing themselves to a world that is much bigger than we can imagine right now. It could be a galactic world for all I know. And so they're going to be sort of tasked on some sort of hero's journey to be very aware of how their thoughts are things, how their mind works, how their mind will vacillate between potentially needing strong structures to be able to see with their eyes, but every time they try to see something with their eyes, they'll know that they need to feel it with their heart before they see it with their eyes, and it will manifest. It will come into their experience. So I also want to say this, that as I contemplated doing these videos, I really recognized the idea that as it is 2026 right now, and I'm talking about children born in November of 2025, they are going to go through Pluto's complete transit through Aquarius as they become adults, which is a 20-year transit. And 14 years of that, most of their puberty and early upbringing will be while Neptune is in the sign of Self, Aries. So this really is a time where potentially magic can happen. And I want you to know this. These children picked you. They picked the environment. They picked the time. So you don't have to be perfect. I think you just have to be your most authentic self, especially with the Scorpio babies, because they'll see under the mask. They're just wired that way. So if you'd like to have your child's chart looked at, if you'd like to have your chart looked at, if I can be of service in any particular way to help you decipher this wonderful map that we've been given as a soul to help guide us through this lifetime, I'm happy to do so. Please like, please subscribe, please share. My information is below in the description. Reach out. I'm available. And happy parenting. See you soon.